This video is part 2 of a 3-part series on Young Justice, and it's a collaboration with For Every Kind of Geek. If you haven't seen his brilliant video on Season 1 of Young Justice yet, I strongly encourage you to check it out and subscribe to his channel, because his videos are leagues better than mine. Young Justice's debut season rocked all of our collective socks off, setting a new standard for character-driven stories in superhero animation. Where can we even start with its astoundingly ambitious follow-up? Well, we can't really talk about Season 2 of Young Justice without addressing the insane 5-year time jump. The showrunners absolutely could have spent 5 seasons telling stories about the cast from Season 1, and that probably would have been great, but they took a much riskier approach in their sophomore year. Young Justice wouldn't just continue into its second season, it would evolve into something new entirely. Season 2 finds each member of the main cast in radically different positions than they were 5 years prior at the end of Season 1. Robin has now taken on the moniker of Nightwing and is leading the team. Red Arrow is in a very dark place, having built a family with Cheshire, only to leave it behind in his search for the original Roy Harper. McGann and Connor have broken up and drifted apart, Wally and Artemis have retired from being heroes, and Calder is now the bad guy who does this.
Welcome back.
Okay, she's not actually dead.
Oops! Spoilers.
But there's only about 5 minutes of screen time that the writers let you believe that Artemis is dead. It is then revealed that Artemis's death was faked, so that she could join Calder as a double agent under the persona of Tigress. This decision, and specifically this reveal, isn't powerful simply because it's surprising, but rather because it leads to circumstances with very complex areas of morality. If there's any central theme of Season 2 of Young Justice, I'd argue that it's morality, and specifically, how far each character is willing to compromise their morals to achieve their goals. This theme is perhaps taken to its most extreme in Miss Martian, who, dare I say it, is the most complex character in the show. In Season 1, we saw how isolated Miss Martian felt growing up. More than anything, McGann wants to fit in and feel accepted, which is why she modeled her physical appearance after a character from a cheesy Earth sitcom she found comfort in during her childhood on Mars, and why she named Superboy her boyfriend after a character in that show. She basically imparts her fantasy upon Superboy so that she can finally feel like she fits in. There are a lot of layers to unpack from these facts alone, but it's important to remember that Miss Martian is also incredibly powerful, almost to a ridiculous degree. Rather than this being a writing problem, however, the writers of Young Justice Season 2 lean into this aspect of her character, asking what happens when Miss Martian pushes too far. What happens when she becomes reckless with the use of her powers? To be specific, what happens when she uses her telepathy to rip intel from her enemy's minds so harshly that she leaves them in a state of comatose? McGann appears to feel no remorse for her actions, despite the terrifying repercussions of them. And that's because Miss Martian will do almost anything to feel like she belongs. She wants to feel like she's a valuable member of the team and a cherished friend, and McGann will go as far as putting her enemies into comas to accomplish that. She'll attempt to craft a world where she is unequivocally accepted, and where that status quo can never be threatened. Yet this status quo is threatened when she confronts Aqualad, who she believes to be a traitor, and suddenly, the exact consequences of her recklessness are made devastatingly clear. After this, it becomes evident to McGann that she must change, and by the end of the season, she reins herself in and does exactly that, achieving a newfound level of control over herself and compassion for those around her. Of course, McGann isn't the only character stretching the concept of morality in Season 2. Nightwing, Calder, Wally, and Artemis all conceal the truth of Calder's and Artemis's mission from the rest of the team, and it is Nightwing who spearheads this movement. In Season 1, Dick Grayson came to the conclusion that he didn't want to grow up to be Batman, yet in Season 2, he regresses from this statement in many ways, putting the mission before all else. Nightwing actively lies to his teammates and betrays their trust as a leader, all in service of defeating the supervillain conglomerate known as the Light. With this goal in mind, those privy to the truth of the mission lie to Artemis's mother in the wake of Artemis's staged death, allowing her to believe that her daughter is dead. If that sounds like something that the bad guys would do, it's because it's not that far off. Nightwing acts on the belief that the ends justify the means, an ideology usually employed by the villains of superhero stories. And on the topic of villains, Aqualad. That's not a sentence I ever thought I'd say prior to Season 2, but Calder suffered greatly between Young Justice's first and second seasons. He lost Tula, one of his closest friends, and he discovered that Aquaman hid the truth of his father's identity from him, his father being the notorious supervillain Black Manta. Young Justice is very clear that Black Manta is far, far from heroic, but we do see that he genuinely cares about the well-being of his son, and that care clearly affects Aqualad and complicates the nature of his mission. It's no surprise that Calder stands by his team in the end and denounces the actions of his father, but it is surprising how much conflict this brings about in him, and what terrible lengths he has to go to in order to remain undetected as a double agent. Similar to Aqualad, Artemis finds herself dragged into an ever-escalating scenario when she goes undercover as Tigress. As expected, this plan goes awry almost immediately, and the consequences of Aqualad's and Artemis's mission quickly begin to take a toll on themselves, those involved in the conspiracy, and those adjacent to it.
The cave was just a place worth sacrificing if it helps us stop the invasion. Look, I'm sorry you lost all your souvenirs.
Are you serious? I don't care about that junk. I'm worried about Artemis, terrified for her. You put her right into his hands.
Superboy is one of those adjacent to this conspiracy, who mourns Artemis's death and is furious upon learning about the truth behind it. Yet he doesn't allow his rage to overcome him. While Superboy doesn't have as much to do this season as some of his teammates do, the growth he's gone through between seasons is startling. In one of the first episodes of Season 2, Superboy opens up to a complete stranger about his breakup with McGann, which is a far cry from his antics in Season 1. It's telling that Superboy, who was defined by his anger last season, is now in almost complete control of it in this season. By now, we've more or less covered the main cast from Season 1, but the greatest leap forward from Young Justice's first season to its second is its expansion in scope and scale. New characters include Tim Drake's Robin, Wonder Girl, Bumblebee, Batgirl, Lagoon Boy, Beast Boy, Impulse, Arsenal, Blue Beetle, Static Shock, Beetle, Black Beetle, Kai, Longuardo, Zombie, Despero, and more. The sheer ambition on display here is deserving of praise, and what I appreciate so much about Season 2 is that ambition, and how well it balances its massive cast. Of course, adding this many characters into the narrative comes with a cost. While basically every character I just mentioned has a functional and coherent character arc in Season 2, not all these characters are as explored as deeply as others. For example, Tim Drake and Wonder Girl learn to put aside their insecurities and step up as vital members of the team, but they're not nearly as compelling as someone like Nightwing or Miss Martian. However, many of the new characters are very well developed. Impulse, despite being the peppiest pepster in all of Pepsville, hides a somber demeanor and motivation beneath the surface. Arsenal gets this amazing showdown with Lex Luthor in Episode 8, and Blue Beetle, well, Blue Beetle is the most important character in the entire season. In this world of generations, legacies, and mentors, Blue Beetle has no mentor.
It's such a total rip. Superboy has Superman, Wonder Girl has Wonder Woman, Robin has Batman, Nightwing, and Batgirl. You've been in this era like, 5 minutes, and already you have 3 Flash mentors, one who feeds you junk food. But me, I never even got the chance to meet the guy who should have been my mentor.
Jaime is just an ordinary kid who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and had a piece of deadly alien technology fused to his spine. This scarab, as it's called, is surprisingly bloodthirsty, and seems to relish any opportunity it can to initiate lethal combat, which tends to make social interaction a bit difficult for Jaime.
Activating plasma cannon now! No!
Breaking and entering, kid? I ought to call the cops.
We are under attack! Why do you resist? Destroy the Maurice! I said no!
No cops, huh?
This division between Jaime and the Scarab leads to constant conflict between the two and for those around them, and for most of the season, they remain in opposition to each other in many ways. This is taken to its most extreme when the Scarab is hijacked by the villainous Reach, and turns both the Scarab and Jaime into their puppet. The threat that Impulse traveled through time to prevent to prevent a desolate future where Blue Beetle becomes, and I quote,
"The biggest, baddest big bad in history,"
is dangerously close to coming true. Yet ultimately, Blue Beetle is freed from this control, and he and the Scarab begin acting as one. Blue Beetle, in fact, is a microcosm of the theme of togetherness, and a microcosm of Season 2 of Young Justice as a whole. By the end of the season, the Scarab and Jaime have learned to work together, despite all the conflict, deception, and disagreement between them, just as the rest of the team have learned to work together. With the team finally trusting one another, they are able to thwart the invasion of the Reach. This season is called Young Justice Invasion after all, and the Reach are the ones doing the invading. Black Beetle acts as one of the chief antagonists of the season, and holy moly is this guy intimidating.
What did you do to her?
Shifted the density of the door. Wasn't quite prepared for that, was she? But don't be jealous. I can put you halfway through the door too.
This guy is so competent and confident that he takes on the entire Young Justice team on his own, and he serves as a haunting vision of what Blue Beetle could become should he ever fall to the dark side. Now, the Reach and the Light, the two main antagonist groups of the second season, aren't particularly nuanced in their motivation. They're very obviously the bad guys, and it would be easy to describe them as one-dimensional or basic villains. However, the fragile partnership between the Reach and the Light shatters in the season's penultimate episode, when Calder reveals that the Light have been playing the Reach since day one. It is in this moment that the antagonists of the season are unequivocally divided, while the team stands together.
For we value our true friends, and unlike you, we are not short on them.
Hey there, Vandy. You miss me?
In a season where the line between right and wrong has been blurred, this distinction drawn between the heroes and the villains in the story is all the more significant and feels incredibly earned. And unfortunately for the emotional well-being of its viewers, Young Justice continues to earn its dramatic moments in its finale, where Wally West lays down his life to save the entire Earth. Wally, who retired from superheroics in favor of a simple life with Artemis. After all the time he spent apart from Artemis while she was undercover, after all the pain and concern the two experienced, he and Artemis don't get their happy ending. The rest of the planet does, thanks to his sacrifice. What else is there to say? This hurts, man. But as much as it hurts, it's a narrative decision that I will defend. Wally's death brings severe consequence into the entire premise of an alien invasion. It pushes Nightwing to reconsider his role as leader, it causes Artemis to rejoin the hero world as Tigress, this time as a force for good, and most importantly, it affirms that Wally West is as noble a hero as one could be. Young Justice Invasion didn't settle for being a passable continuation of the first season, for a story that would merely whelm its audience. It aimed to further explore the characters we've grown attached to, and to exponentially expand the world of this take on the DC Universe, and it succeeded on both accounts. It performed this impossible task of casting a net that is both wide and deep, and whatever flaws Season 2 may have, even if it spreads itself just a little too thin, the accomplishments of Young Justice Invasion cannot be denied. Young Justice's ambition would only continue to grow in its third season, but that is a conversation for another day.
Another day! There won't be another day!
Whoops, how did that get in there? Like Cole said, this is part 2 of a 3-part collab. You can watch part 1 on my channel for every kind of geek, and while you're there, stick around. Part 3 is coming soon.
As Doug said, we will both be covering Season 3 of Young Justice in the near future. But until then, thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to Doug's channel for every kind of geek, as he is one of the most talented video essayists around. In addition to Young Justice, I'll be covering another beloved DC cartoon next, so I'll see you guys then.